If you're wondering how bad hackers take over cloud workload on the internet, or how you can even protect your cloud workload from bad hackers on the internet from taking over, then this is a video for you. This is a video about AWS misconfiguration called Insecure Resource Misconfiguration, aka ABRA CONFDABRA. In this video, we'll talk about the origin story, talk about the common causes, where can you find them, and how can you fix them. So let's get into the video. First of all, the origin story of ABRA CONFDABRA. If you have a cloud workload or a resource that is open to the internet and is potentially vulnerable to any form of attack out there, an attacker can take over that, and that is the birth of ABRA CONFDABRA because you had an insecure resource configuration. If you don't know what resource and cloud workload is, a cloud workload is basically an application that is hosted on the AWS, and a resource could be any service or application running in the AWS. A simple example of a cloud workload can be an application hosted on an AWS EC2 instance running on the internet. Basically, a vulnerable application that is exposed to the internet which an attacker can exploit. That's a great example of a cloud workload that can be compromised. So you should try and not have your cloud workload, which is potentially vulnerable, out on the internet.
Please don't do this.
Now, the common causes for insecure resource misconfiguration include not using IAC or infrastructure as code to create your infrastructure that predefines the state of the infrastructure that would be created, or you are using infrastructure as code, but you're still not restricting who can change the resources in the AWS account itself. These two scenarios are some of the common causes why you find resource misconfiguration. Now, you may be wondering, why is this bad? Well, let me tell you. This is bad because in case you're running a compromised application in your environment, that allows for potential ransomware. Yes, people can delete the data and leave a note to say, pay me the money and get your data back.
$50,000.
You don't want to expose yourself, or even worse, you could have a data breach. People may steal the data which is in your private server, which was accidentally exposed to the internet, and lo and behold, you have a data breach, which you do not want.
Watch that.
Now let's talk about three places where ABRA CONFDABRA or insecure resource misconfiguration tends to hide. First one, your cloud workload itself. Now, most cloud workload are either private or public, and they're usually made private or public by something called a virtual private cloud, or VPC, and your responsibility is to ensure that your sensitive information for servers, databases, anything which should not be facing the internet should not face the internet. This could be because there's an internet gateway attached to the VPC, and you have allowed a route from your private server or your private database onto the internet, right over there. Another place where ABRA CONFDABRA could be hiding is in your IAM roles. Now, if you use some of the managed service from AWS like Amazon EKS, which is their Elastic Kubernetes service, or any other role which has an IAM role attached to it, if you have an overtly permissive IAM role, basically allowing it to do whatever it wants, is also a great place to find ABRA CONFDABRA. If you are an organization which is required to be compliant but are deploying resources using resources from AWS which are not compliant, that's also a great place to find ABRA CONFDABRA, because that is an insecure resource configuration where you are potentially opening up yourself to a non-compliance being marked on your audit because you didn't check the compliance standards for services you're using. Now, ABRA CONFDABRA also appears in other places wherever there's misconfiguration, but you obviously want to know how to stop ABRA CONFDABRA. A great way to stop ABRA CONFDABRA is the use of IAC or infrastructure as code to define what application infrastructure should be used, what services should be used, and what would be the exact state of the infrastructure that would be created, the code that would be deployed in the application, and at the same time restricting who can make changes in the environment, that every change in the environment should only go through infrastructure as code. Another thing you could also do is, if you have workload that is meant to be on the internet, then you can make sure that you only have firewall rules or security groups defined with sources that you know and trust. Like, for example, it could be a CIDR range or IP address of your company, or it could also be a security group of another resource that you think you trust as a source. Making sure it's only known sources in your security role is a great way to make sure that there is no misconfiguration occurring and there is no ABRA CONFDABRA appearing. And another way to be proactive about ABRA CONFDABRA is to make sure you use something like Event Bridge from AWS or AWS Lambda combination. Essentially, Event Bridge would allow you to trigger an event when something unusual happens. Like, for example, an AWS S3 becomes accidentally public, or the example that I said earlier where you have an application that is open to the internet, a Lambda function could be triggered because of that event, which would remediate that action, and your ABRA CONFDABRA is conquered. If you enjoyed learning about insecure resource misconfiguration or ABRA CONFDABRA, you would definitely be interested in the other AWS cloud security villains that we have, which I'll point out over here, but there's a whole playlist for this, so definitely check them out. And I'll leave a link for the blog where we talk about this in more detail in the description for you to follow and introduce yourself to all the other cloud security villains that we have, because as cloud security advocates, we are uniting together to fight all these cloud security villains, and I hope you join me. I also hope you join us if you are someone who's trying to learn about cloud security, because we talk about cloud security every day, every week, every month, every year on Cloud Security Podcast, YouTube and LinkedIn channels. Definitely follow and subscribe us over there. If you have a question about cloud security, feel free to drop that as a comment as well. But if you think I've missed something about this vulnerability, definitely drop that as a comment, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.